بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وارزقنا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه آمين 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 أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, wonderful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought us together for the intention to usher in the new month of Rabi Al Awwal in this collective way. And I think there's something always for us to reflect about, how our idea of time that Allah has given us has bound it for us to always look upwards to the heavens, and particularly the cycle of the moon, its waxing and its waning. And in doing so, it forces us to look into the past. Some of you may understand this in the sense that whenever you look at the heavenly skies and its celestial bodies, you are not looking at the present. You're looking at something that has already happened. By the time that you have understood it in your moment, it can either be happened many millions of years previous. So there's this constant connection in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made instructional for us, in the broader sense of going towards instructing us to see the birth of the new moon, and in doing so is connecting it to something which is also beyond the present. And when that comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this becomes even more highlighted, because in looking up at the heavens and knowing that what we're seeing now is actually something that has happened millennia before, right? It's indication of something that's happened before. And for us, that sign is an indication of, in this particular case, the greatest blessing that Allah created. And you see, our scholars and even the verses of the Quran that speak about this, first the verses of the Quran, we see in Surah Al-Imran in ayah 81, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about the covenant that He took from prophets at the time when the Prophet ﷺ and other prophets were still in the form of souls. And the ayah is وَأَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ لَمَّا أَتَيْتَاكُم مِّنَ الْكِتَابِ وَحِكْمَةٍ, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took وَأَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقًا نَبِيِّينَ, when Allah took a covenant from the prophets, and this covenant was from the prophets, was that if He was to send the Prophet ﷺ at any time during their office, they would have to believed in Him. This promise was taken in the unseen. This was taken before they were sent in the world. And this led our scholars to explain that the significance of the Prophet ﷺ as the first to be created, the first to be created from the prophets. And that makes it important for us because He's the first that was created from the messengers, and He's the last of them to be sent. And what we're doing here is what we say is connecting the dots. In what way? Because every time we're trying to see this month, which marks the coming of when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for that physical manifestation of him to be in the world, that then became an announcement for all of us that the greatest blessing has now arrived. And that greatest blessing, its inception began with the presence of Allah. And for us to remind ourselves of the significance of this, obviously as Muslims is one thing, but we must understand that this extends to the whole of humanity. Hence, the Prophet ﷺ not being particularly sent to a people, but sent to humankind, is even more of a point that marks the reason why he's anointed with the finality of messengership. So us coming together with this anticipation, it's an anticipation of what? We're ushering in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announced in a primordial time, that he made it known to us through the coming of a month, that this month, and particularly as most scholars gravitate to the position of on the 12th of Rabi Al Awwal, saw that greatest blessing become manifest in the world. How is it such a great blessing for us all? Because it's a blessing that brings us hope. It brings us hope in ourselves, in how we can be better, how we can draw closer to Allah, how can we be people that Allah accepts. This is why he's the greatest blessing. He's a blessing that removed from us any sense of despair. He gave us every understanding of how to be fulfilled human beings in ourselves, in our mu'amala, in our dealings, in our parenting, in our concerns. He gave us hope in that we can do these things. And we can not only do them well, we can do them with a purpose that brings us to eternal success. You know, I had thought of mentioning, and I will inshallah, but one of the things our scholars have written, many things obviously, but some of the things they highlighted was the particularly distinguishing traits of the Prophet ﷺ. And it gets spoken of as like his khasa'is, you know. And Imam Suyuti, the great scholar, muhaddith, he's written quite a few books on this. And one of his main works is Khasa'is al-Kubra, you know, which means the momentous, distinguishing qualities of the Prophet ﷺ. And recently, well, not recently, it's been some years now, but a sheikh from Mecca, Shaykh Nabil al-Ghamri, he's done an edition of this book, which is now, it's in 8 volumes. So the whole book of Imam Suyuti is dedicated to explain and to point out qualities of the Messenger ﷺ that make him distinguished as the Messenger of Allah amongst the messengers. Right? That makes him unique in these reasons. And the first chapter you expect is he starts with what? He says, from the distinguishing qualities of the Prophet ﷺ is that he is the first of the prophets to have been created. And he is the first of them to have received the prophecy and the covenant. And in that, Adam alayhi salam had to take the covenant from him. People don't, you know, Adam alayhi salam took the covenant from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he explains this through hadith and through ayahs of the Quran. One is the ayah that I originally mentioned. And then he mentions another hadith in the commentary to this, in which the Prophet ﷺ You know, he mentioned quite clearly when asked, when were you a prophet? And there's different versions of this. When that question, Mata kunta nabiya, when were you a prophet? One is Mata kunta nabiya, one is Mata kutibta, when was it written for you to be the prophet? One version is Mata ustumbita, from Naba'a, which is when were you informed that you were a prophet? These are different narrations to that question. And one of the most encompassing statements or hadith we have on that particular topic is a narration from Maysara, in which the Prophet ﷺ was asked, Mat kunta nabiyya, when were you a prophet? And he ﷺ said, Lamma khalaqallahu arda istawa ila sama, when Allah created the earth and then he leveled out. He created the earth and then he ascended in the way that befits him to the heavens. And then he made the 7 heavens, and then he created the throne. And then he wrote upon the leg of the throne, Muhammad Rasulullah, Khatam al-Anbiya. And then he created Jannah. And he made to dwell in Jannah Adam and Hawa. And he wrote my name on every door and every leaf and on every handle and on every tent. And this is when Adam was still between body, form and soul. Right? He hadn't yet even, he wasn't ensouled. Adam was still in his soulless form. Right? And then the hadith goes on, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to bring to life, bring him to life, to bring Adam to life, Adam looked upon the throne and he saw my name. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then told him that name you see, he's the master of your progeny. He's the master of your progeny. Therefore, the hadith is in the hadith goes on to say that when Adam and Hawa, when they slipped up, you know, and they found themselves removed from Jannah to the earth, the Prophet ﷺ said, then when he made his tawbah, when they made their tawbah, not just he, it says taba, them too, when they made their tawbah, they made it through the intercession of my name. This is a sound hadith. This is a Hasan hadith. This isn't right? Okay? And the point is what? We sit here now with the anticipation of hopefully, inshallah, Allah Aktub lana, Allah writes for us to see the start of this amazing month. And that anticipation is also a testimony for us about being people of Iman. Yes, this is what Iman should do. It should stir in you and stir in us this anticipation to look for the Prophet ﷺ. And in this way, we're looking for him, right? We're looking for him through this month, because it was this month that Allah chose to send him in and to bring all the khair that we now know as being a way of living, as a way of understanding, to have a purpose in our lives. And so therefore, when we connect to this, right? When we connect to this, we're connecting to something that was announced eons ago. You understand? And that's why our fitrah and our very constitution and every human being's constitution, yes, every human being's fitrah is only going to become sound when it finds that realization of the prophetic light. This is how Allah's intended it. And this is why as Muslims we are always struggling to do that. It's not easy. I'm not here to romanticize this in this way as well. But that's the struggle, you know. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "La yu'minu ahadukum hatta yakunu hawahu taba'an lima ji'tu bihi." None of you come to perfect iman, complete iman, until your hawa, until your ego is in line with what I brought, is in agreement with what I brought, right? So the light of Nabuwa, the light of prophecy, is what leads us. Is what leads us in these dark times. And to look up to the heavens to see that sliver of the new crescent, of that light, of that ray, becomes a symbolization, yes, of what points onto as an announcement of what was to be and is the Muhammadan light. And it should serve as an encouragement for us, because this is why, you know, we're here. We're here to what? We're here to try and revive in ourselves a love for Allah, a love for His Messenger, through practices that we have been encouraged to do, right? This is not a, you know, we're not here to have moon wars and all that nonsense. There's enough people who want to do that. You can go and find them and join those groups. Yeah. This is about coming and trying to really just take the spirit of what the Prophet ﷺ was instructing us to do, and to feel enriched by that, and understand that in those practices is a purifying of your soul, is a rectifying of your soul in the practices. Do you see what I mean? Not in the debates. The debates have their place. I'm not going to totally, you know, they've got a context. But this isn't about that. This is about just coming here and trying to what? Reconnect ourselves to something that Allah announces in the Quran and His Messenger announces as a way of knowing how time is moving, how time is changing, how we are always moving forward, right? Yet, it's making us reflect about what has gone before, because we have to look upwards, and the upwards always going to remind us of what is in the past, right? So inshallah, this is going to be a short reminder. May Allah make it a month that we particularly benefit from in our iman, in our faith, in our practice, and obviously in our love for the Prophet. But love is words, is, you know, love is real love when it's demonstrated. You know, it's nice. We must, you know, we sing the beautiful poems, these poetic, and the meaning in these poems is amazing. Like just the chapter read there of Imam Busiri, or verses from it. The meanings in these verses are so concise and drawn upon, you know, what is clearly held in Quran and Hadith. You know, the meaning of it, and it's so enriching, and that's why it's very helpful for us. But remember, all of these things is to take us to action, right? It's for us to become better people in our deen, better believers in our practice. More honest we can be, the better that is for us in this world and the hereafter. This is one of the biggest things that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. You know, be honest people, be faithful and be honest people with each other in your ma'amala. You know, think good of each other. Don't think bad. Stop negative thoughts. You always wonder, oh, why do people think bad about me? Well, have you ever thought about how bad you think about other people? You can't start thinking good if you're always thinking bad about other people, right? And part of the problems a lot of us Muslims suffer from, especially the young blood, right, and the youth, is that they've got a real victimized mentality. The slightest bit of correction, oh, we're the victim, you know, and yet they know they want to change. Do you see the point? But you've got to learn to what? Think positive, think clearly, think wholesome, and hold those thoughts well. And how do you help yourself to do that? Think wholesome about other people. That's one thing. If you want to do one simple thing for Rabi Al Awwal, right? There's lots of things, but practical thing. Have good opinion of each other. And if you're finding it hard, then it's best that you what? You don't articulate. You know what I mean by that? Don't speak what might be going in your head. That's the worst thing you can do. Keep your mouth closed. These are the real things that are going to make us feel in line with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah. And I think these practice alone, I say it to myself, I'm not just saying, I'm saying to myself, If we can take that from Rabi Al Awwal, just make that a little focus and praying on the Prophet ﷺ, inshallah, it will be a very profitable month for us. And inshallah, it will be a month that sees us, inshallah, get improvements and, you know, overcome our shortcomings. No? Allah protect us all. Jazakallah khair for your patience. I believe, inshallah, we'll have a short qasida as well. And then there'll be the azan of Maghrib. Yeah. And inshallah, Allah accept it from us, inshallah. So.